meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Northfield Public School Board. Today is Monday, August 22nd, 2016, and the time is 7:05 p.m. Dr. Hillman, there are a number of items in the table file.
Yes, we have a number of materials that accompany this evening's presentations, as well as appointments, increases, decreases, and change in assignments, resignation, and then we also have an item for individual action regarding joining the Minnesota Association of Charter School Authorizers.
Okay, thank you. If there's no objection, we'll add these items to the agenda as we move forward. We now have an opportunity for public comment. This is a chance for anyone residing in the Northfield Public School District to address the board. Is there anyone here who wishes to address the board? Seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Board members, you have in your packet minutes from the regular school board meeting held on Monday, August 8th, 2016. Is there a motion to approve these minutes? Moved by Margaret. Is there a second? Second by Jeff. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes of the regular school board meeting held on Monday, August 8th, 2016, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will move on to announcements and recognitions. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, we have a few this evening. First, more than 30 district employees participated in at least one portion of the PREPARE training held over 3 days last week at Northfield High School. PREPARE stands for Prevent, Reaffirm, Evaluate, Provide and Respond, and Examine. It's a school crisis prevention and intervention training program, and the University of Wisconsin River Falls School of Psychology professors Scott Wazewski and Todd Savage led district employees through the training. The intent of the training was to increase the district's capacity to prevent, address, and follow up on crisis situations in the district. And I want to particularly thank the district staff who participated and Jim Kulseth, Carrie Dubin, and Melissa Larson who coordinated the training. It's the kind of training we hope we never have to use, but we know we want to make sure we have common language and those kinds of things. So this is really considered one of the best practice pieces for crisis intervention. We also want to mention that Northfield's Tackling Obstacles and Raising College Hopes, commonly known as TORCH, was recently recognized as one of 20 finalists nationwide for the 2016 Examples of Excellencia Recognition Program. This program recognizes those programs that increase opportunities and achievement for Latino students. And according to the organization's press release that identified TORCH as one of the 20 finalists, this year's 20 finalists were selected from among 190 programs in 33 states, Puerto Rico, and the District of Columbia, and these were nominated in 4 categories: associates, bachelor's, graduate, and a community-based organization, and ours, of course, was a community-based organization. We also want to mention that in your table file tonight you have this very lovely document. It's the Greenvale Park Community School Report to the Community. It was completed this month. The report details the results of the second year of community school programming at Greenvale Park. The report is in the process of being mailed to all Greenvale Park families, all households within 1 mile of Greenvale Park Elementary, and all families with preschool children living in the Greenvale Park attendance boundaries, and to local real estate agents. We really want to thank all those people who assisted with the report's compilation, especially to our friends at Nuger Communications who did the design work. And finally this evening, congratulations to Board of Education member Rob Hardy, who is not here this evening, but he was recently named Northfield's first official Poet Laureate by the Northfield Public Library and the Arts and Culture Commission. And according to the press release, in choosing Rob Hardy, the selection committee notes his substantial record of publication, the critical acclaim for his poetry, and his established history of activity in the Northfield literary community. His work with students in the community spans from elementary schools through middle and high school and into the colleges. So we want to congratulate Dr. Hardy on his selection as a Poet Laureate for Northfield. Those are your announcements and recognitions for this evening.
Okay, good stuff. Board members, anyone else have anything to add? No? Okay. We will move on then to item for discussion and reports. Our first item for discussion will be a presentation on QCOM by Ray Coudray as representative of the Northfield Education Association. And just as a reminder to board members, a copy of his PowerPoint was in the table file.
Bruce, do you want to move over to get my good side over here?
Yeah, just everybody's hang on.
I might stand behind the screen and block most of that stuff up here. You guys can see all my secrets here. The blank documents are where all the magic really lies. The Rockmore Bullet Bible folder is top secret, so nobody can see that one. Alright. Should work. Sweet. Little keystone issue there. Alright, well thank you very much for having me here, everybody. Wow, look at these people in this room. This is an amazing place. So I am here as a representative of the Northfield Education Association. We've been working with a design group to take a look at QComp, which is something we had looked at about 10 years ago. I'm the chairperson of this group. We've been working throughout the summer and a little bit last spring. We communicated a little bit with Dr. Hillman and with Ms. Fieselman about, our desire, and they said, well, take a look at it, get something together, and then come back and tell us what you know. So members of our committee, Kelly Hebzinski, Jeannie Hanslick, Catherine Norrie, Deb Seitz, Diane Frederick, Gina Swenson, Melissa Larson, and our president, Amy Sieve. So we had representation from throughout the district. First of all, let's see, what's QComp is kind of the first question here. So the first item there, we know that in the form of our professional learning communities. If implemented, if we were able to come up with something that you approved and we approved, which is a long ways down the road, well, it's a lot of work down the road. It's not that far down the road if we want to try something. But QComp would allow for an increased scaffold which would support our current efforts in professional learning communities. The second item there would allow, with observations and evaluations, what that is talking about is a peer coaching and mentoring system that focuses on growth. If implemented, if we were able to find something that worked, every teacher would participate in 3 observations with various peer coaches throughout the year. And these observations would be in addition to our current TDE, or teacher development evaluation system that's run by the administration. And ours would focus on professional growth using elements of the model that we already have in place. The career ladder positions is a 4th part of QComp. These are all 4 of these are required by the statute. The career ladder positions provide funding to pay for essentially the scaffold, peer mentors, coaches, training, as well as oversight of the program. In addition, the plan would provide for a little bit more unified system of mentorship for teachers who are new to the career or new to the district. The mentors would also be used for veterans who choose to utilize this program, and would allow an opportunity for veteran teachers to be paid for something that contributes to the overall growth in our profession. So it would basically be on top of what we already have in place to allow for a real focus on reflective practice. And then the 4th item that is required by the statute would be 2 parts. The performance pay is awarded based on building goals, which we have in place currently at this time, PLC goals, which we have in place, and results of the peer observations. That's 1/2 of the performance pay piece. The salary schedule enhancement would basically leave the current steps and lanes intact, but it would be a requirement to have some sort of mechanism for moving steps on the salary schedule. That's part of the statute. So then the question becomes, why now? Why would I come to you now? Well, we've been down this road before. For those of you who have been here long enough, we tried about a decade ago, and we had a failed effort with implementation. But we feel that things are quite a bit more favorable, and we have a lot more pieces in place, and it's just a different environment at this point. The professional learning communities are in place. That's something that was just on the horizon when we originally looked at something like this. So they are a known quantity that's up and running. We have a knowledge base that we didn't have 10 years ago. We put together a plan before, which wasn't passed by the members of the Northfield Education Association. We learned a lot because when this first plan was created, there were a lot more unknowns. We didn't have professional learning communities, as I pointed out. There was a limited buy-in. It was, I think the board at that time they wanted to try it, but there was a little bit of a reticence on that side, and a little reticence from staff, which played out in a vote against moving forward at 10 years ago. We now have working models of Q-Comp from districts throughout the state, representing over 50% of the teachers in Minnesota. So we have plans that we've seen that work, and they work well. Currently, the current support that we have fully implemented professional learning communities, which is one of the 4 required components. We have surveyed our membership, and 90% of our members support exploring Q-Comp and finding a model that might work for our district. We have a number of local experts in the form of teachers who have worked under this system in other districts, such as Lakeville, St. Louis Park, smaller districts such as Farmington, or Montgomery, districts in our conference such as Farmington, and then Rosemount, Apple Valley, Egan. Of course, maybe that's wrong. Is Farmington still in our conference? Well, they used to be. They're right up the road. I'll show you afterwards if anybody needs to know. District needs. Some of the current needs that we have are dovetail nicely with this legislation. We need a sustainable mentorship program. We've been working on something for years. This would provide funding that would bolster a mentorship program that would help with the implementation of PLC and get a sort of a deeper leadership model. It would provide for peer observation system which focuses on professional growth through reflective practice. These are things we've kind of worked on and towards as a district for quite some time. We've had cognitive coaching that's been in place. We have tried mentors in a variety of different ways, and of course the aforementioned PLC time. If we can find a way to make this work, then Q-Comp would allow us to access additional funding through the state that would strengthen the initiatives that we already have in place and provide a way to pay people for doing the important work that would provide a scaffold of support around some of these initiatives and around some of our current efforts. So looking at a timeline here, obviously board discussion is something that you'll need to have over, however long it takes you, really. That's up to you. You need time to process. You need to educate yourself a little more on what Q-Comp really means. And I know that you're currently looking at the long-range plan, so how does it fit in with that? Does it help dovetail with, or does it dovetail with some of the initiatives there? And you need to figure out if this is something that fits in with our district. Along with that, we don't necessarily have to wait until you decide yes or no, because we could, once you get enough information, submit a letter of intent, which would essentially get us in line. And it doesn't bind anybody to anything. That's one of the big things you want to take out of this is at no point are we bound to this until we vote on it as a board and a association, just like you would ratify our contract. So we can take some steps down the road that would allow us to get in line for the funding piece and work on something, communicate back and forth, figure out if it works, and then make our decision later. But I do encourage that if you, in the next couple of meetings, get a chance to have the discussions, submitting a letter of intent would be a fabulous thing to do, just to say, yeah, we're looking at it, so put us in line. It doesn't commit us. We have a plan that we've worked on that is really quite well put together within the guidelines of the state statute. We have used the districts that I talked about before. We've got a lot of working models. Some of the earlier ones were way clunkier as far as the way that they kind of dovetailed with what was going on. The models we have now, like from Farmington and Lakeville and Montgomery and St. Louis Park, do a lot of the things that we think are valuable. So what we would like to do, and this kind of goes, we kind of got to wait for some word on you. We would like to have some informational meetings to we are going to, and just let teachers know, here's a possible plan that we think might work. Here are some of the details, and here's how it fits into your professional development. And again, nothing is binding, but we just feel like we should kind of operate on a two-track system of exploring while still being in line. Because there is a deadline of application. There's 2 deadlines. Our goal is October 15th. You have to decide if that fits with you. Even submitting the plan to the state by October 15th still doesn't commit us to do anything. It just gets us to a point where the state can look at it and say, yes, all of these components follow what's in the intent of the legislation, and this could be approved, if you went forward with it. Again, the approval would not bind the Northfield Education Association or the Northfield School Boards. Finally, the Department of Education approval would depend on a lot of sort of communication back and forth. The word we've heard is that's a months-long process. So if we were even thinking about doing it for next year, it could take us till January or February to get an approval from the state. And right now, it's a little bit of a curveball, but there is no money at the state for this. But our understanding is, if we were to get a preliminary approval, then every 2 years this has happened in exactly the same way, and they increase the funding based on who is already approved, and they cover that. Because quite frankly, it looks pretty bad if you've got something you put into law, half the teachers in the state are already operating under this system, and then you're going to say no to a district of 300 teachers or so. So that is the way it's been every 2 years. You guys deal with state budget issues all the time. You'll completely understand that that's just the way it is. So if we were able to come to a place where we thought this plan would work for our district, and it gets approved by the state, then the last step, which would be most likely in the spring of this year, would be final ratification, just like we do. It would be a memorandum of understanding that it would be written into. And then, of course, if all things were to go forward, the implementation would be a year down the road. So I know this sounds a lot rushed because I'm giving you some brand new information. I think you had a little bit of a heads up, but this is pretty new. But I guess I'll just open it up for questions right now.
If I can just, I want to let folks know that Molly and I met with Ray and the team last spring to hear Ed Minnesota come out and just share the beginning portions of QCOM and really helping educate the people on the committee about a number of really detailed questions. The QCOM process, from my perspective of how the association run, has been incredibly well organized. And last Friday, Molly, Director of HR, Molly Wieselman, and myself spent 2 hours with Ray and Brent Rauch, another member of the committee, and I have to tell you, I am thoroughly impressed with the work that the committee has done to this point. There's a lot of thought put in. If there is something, the benefit of time, that we've had since the last attempt at QComp, I think has really worked in our favor because, as Ray said, I think early on, a number of the plans of the first districts were a little bit clunky. And I think that over time they've been refined. And I think that there's a number of pieces that we've learned from our committee, the NEA's committee has really learned from other people's successes, things that they wish that they would do differently. They have appropriately borrowed and sometimes maybe even stolen parts of other plans.
Straight up stole
in terms of things that have been the best. I think that that's a really positive piece. I think the thing that I'm interested in exploring QComp further about is really what it brings to the table for us in terms of professional development.
Yeah.
As Ray said, our mentoring, we have a lot of the pieces in place if you think about it. We have PLCs in place, we have some peer coaching in place, so not as robust as it would be under this program. And one of the things I personally know is that teachers really benefit from regular feedback. And if you think about there's a number of instructional coaches in a career ladder that I really like that would really inject a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, and what we really need are numbers of people who are trained to help provide that feedback in a non-evaluative manner. So I'm really impressed with that portion of the plan of what Ray and the committee have done to look at that. And then, of course, when we're doing most of the stuff already, as Ray has outlined, we would like the money. And even though the money is not there right now, what we have seen, as Ray said, in the last few years, the legislature has funded the people who have had good plans and who have plans that have been approved. And it's pretty significant. I mean, we're talking, I think it's 190, 191 on the aid side, and then we also have the opportunity for, I think it's a $94 levy within that. Those numbers.
Yes.
So the
One
fact is that these are
something.
dollars that we could be getting things for doing a lot of things that we're already doing, and we could expand to really help our teachers in another way to help bolster their growth and reflection. So I just wanted to, I asked Ray to come and give an overview because we spent 2 hours talking through the plan and we really scratched the surface. So before we got into further details, I wanted you to have an overview of what QComp was, what the plan in general and how the timelines, and then our plan would be to come back and do some more detailed. We're never going to get down to the 30-foot level, but we would get closer to that if it's something you'd like us to continue to explore, which I think we should for many reasons of what Ray stated and the things I've shared here today. So thanks, Ray, for letting me dovetail on that.
That's great. Are there any questions?
Questions, board members? Ellen?
I have two. So first, I appreciate you bringing this back. I remember when we first were embedding PLCs, thinking about whether we revisit it again, and so I really appreciate the fact that the NEA has been continuing to look at when it fits. So my one question has to do with the PLC part, and this might be, I understand from some of the districts in the southwest corner of the state that doing that changed sort of the nature of how they did PLCs and how they had to report in the data sort of reporting part of it. So I don't know if you have a sense of that would be a burden on our assessment coordinator, or if the PLCs, the teachers would have to take more on in terms of data reporting.
We've put together a lot in this plan. We had 9 teachers that have spent probably 18 to 20 hours each on this. So we've gotten deep into it. So the answer to that question is the way we've built it provides for that management to happen within the plan. And there are teachers who would have those responsibilities of working, it's starting all the way down on there's a group of teachers that works with about 7 or so teachers, and there's another layer over that kind of is helping to make sure on a building level it's more organized, and then there's a person that organizes that from the very top as well and kind of hands off. So what it would look like in practice in some way, shape, or form is once this is all done during the end of the year, then the person who is basically in charge of this program would hand that over to the payroll people, and it would all go one time out. Does that answer what you're looking at?
Yeah, and then, is it okay?
Oh yeah,
One more question?
absolutely.
And then the other question is, from what I remembered back in the day, part of the reason we weren't going in this direction was the number of teachers that would be taken out of the classroom, and that was something that the NEA was really uncomfortable with.
Yeah, that was a big part of it, and we've got that. There is some release days that would be built in the current version of the plan, of course. For instance, there would be some people who would miss a limited amount of 6 or 7 days throughout the year. But there's only one full-time release position at this point that's in the current state of the plan. Again, that's this is a plan that hasn't been, vetted
Right.
by the membership or certainly by you, but we kept that first and foremost as one of our big goals, was to not take people out of the classroom. I think the last one had a lot of, sort of part-time out of the classroom, and this one has much less of that, for sure.
Thank you.
No.
Are there districts that establish QComp and then have dropped the program, and if so, what?
That's a good question.
What can we learn?
Yeah, what we've learned is that the people who have opted out for the most part are some of the early adopters whose plan it wasn't sustainable. So now we've got better models to go on. So that was the big takeaway. Even now, there's a few of those that are kind of contemplating pulling out of the plan because it just didn't.
Thank you. Good
They did too
presentation.
much.
Thank you.
All right. Any other issues,
Margaret.
questions? Hi.
I just heard you speak about time out of the classroom with teachers.
Yeah.
What have been maybe one or two of the other main objections, and how have these schools who've implemented it dealt with those objections?
I can't speak too much for other schools. I can speak maybe more towards when we first did this, because I led the failed charge on that as well. So, but I learned a lot.
Nothing ventured, nothing.
That's right. That's right. And I believe in this. Ellen and I were in this conversations about PLCs way early, and actually it makes me smile when you ask that question, just because I was thinking about your knowledge base on that. It was so helpful. But anyways, one of the things that we learned was the time out of class was an issue. At that time, PLCs, we were describing what they would be like. I knew where they were going to end up. You just knew where it was going. But it was only because of research I had done more in my education just right at that time. Very few people knew that. So that was a whole vision that you couldn't even hardly paint for people. One of them was there is a district component. There's a $91 piece on top, and that the board elected not to do that, and I think that that hurt a little bit as well, only because that part is pretty instrumental in making all of it work as far as making it worth the time. To fill out the budget, the straight state appropriation isn't quite enough. And when the time's right, at some point I can sort of show you guys the budget, and I'll share that with the NEA as well. And you'll see exactly what I mean. It's pretty easy to see. So those were the big issues as far as I could tell.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Other questions? I have two questions. So you said that over 50% of the teachers, or half the teachers in the state, are in QComp.
Not half the schools.
No, yeah, half the teachers. That's
Yep.
my question. How many districts does that represent?
I don't know, because it's a lot of big districts, like
Okay.
DQ, Dakota County, and
Yeah.
St. Louis Park, Farmington. Those are a lot of kids in those schools, so I don't know the number of districts.
Yeah, I actually pulled something off MDE. They said QComp currently serves approximately 422,000 students.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a big number. And then my other question was on the performance pay and salary schedule enhancement.
Yep.
I wanted to, I didn't write fast enough. Tell me again, performance pay. I had based on building goals, PLC goals, and was there something else?
There would be, it depends on which model you look at,
Okay.
but basically imagine that there are two components. There is the performance pay, and that has several pieces to it. So it would be divided out percentage-wise, let's say. And it would be a certain amount would be for the goals you set with your own students. Are those met? For example, last year in my PLC, we set a goal of reducing the number of D's and F's. And our plan in order to do that was to really get a system in place of having students complete their homework every day consistently. and it just knocked it out of the park. So in that case, we met that goal, so you would get that part of that stipend. And then there would be another one that would be on building goals, and those are the ones that are set, starting at DPAC and moving down, as you guys know. And then there would be another one on the evaluation process. So you'd have to reach a certain standard in the evaluation. You reflect on the standard. We have some built-in safeguards as far as, if early on you have some issue with that, what do? You don't just let someone flounder. You put in pieces that are going to help them to grow. So that would be the performance pay, kind of in a upper level look at it. And then the salary schedule piece is the only requirement by legislation is that you have a trigger to move from this step to this step. If you picture the salary schedule, we already have it's already an education requirement this way, and so now there's a trigger that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, Val, this might be a question for you. When I was looking at, we were talking about the $91, which is a board-approved levy. So that sort of timing and all of that would happen as we approve, or as we discuss, or potentially approve QComp. Will that marry up with when board has to approve the levy, so that goes into
Not
the
likely.
property tax piece?
Yeah, because I'm doing the levy right now for 17-18.
Yeah.
So it's always going to be a year behind, which is, that's how our lease levy works as well. It's kind of a reimbursement based.
But that still makes it workable.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think the key thing is that they wouldn't want boards to take action on a levy until they know that their plan has been approved. And the deadline for the plans are October 15th, which is after the preliminary levy submission time period. So it's one of those pieces where when we pull out the 70-some page levy document, there are pieces that, remember, go back several years, and this is one of those pieces that when we see it on there, it wouldn't be for the current year, it would be for previous years.
Okay. Okay. Ellen.
So my last question is the timeline. So what do you need from the board tonight? What do you need from the
We
board
need nothing
September?
tonight, but a willingness to have your discussion in whatever way that you are required to do that. But what we're hoping to get is a letter of intent really as soon as you're comfortable with that. And then, and really at that point, it's more of a go-ahead to that you're interested in, kind of like what we did with our membership. Go ahead and say, hey, we're interested, we want to continue down this road and see where it takes us. Which would, then be sort of allow us to get an application in by the 15th. So, and then it's a long time from there. Everything just takes a long time at that point. But getting in line is really the main thing.
We wanted to have an overview tonight, and then as we typically do, we bring an issue like this back a couple of times with this increasing level of depth. So my intent would be to bring this back in September, possibly even at both meetings, so that we can keep moving down the track. And as Ray has said, letter of intent doesn't commit you. Even submitting the plan doesn't necessarily commit you. There's a number of steps where you can say, well, let's take a step and look at this. But we think that what we've seen really has enough promise that we should really continue forward looking at it.
Yeah, it's almost like you're in a large auditorium and you're going to run over and get in line, and then we're going to wait in line for a whole long time. So, but that's the way it is. So.
Okay. No.
Maybe a silly question, but QComp is it an acronym, or how do you explain to the community how QComp fits into the schedule?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not a straight acronym. It stands for Quality Compensation, and there's actually another name which is much clearer, ATPPS.
Oh, of course.
Which is the Alternative Teacher Pay and
For performance.
Performance Pay System. That's what it is. But that's a good question. I don't have the answer to it.
But I think you answered it for me.
That's what I was trying to do tonight. That's why I was trying to give you the big overview without saying,
Quality compensation is sufficient.
Oh, there you go.
I think that'll be a big help. Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Well,
I helped.
and it's for those of us who recall back to 2005, that was a result of the legislative session of 2005 with
Yeah.
Governor Palenti, so it's 11 years.
And it's still here, so.
Right, right, exactly.
All right, any other questions? Thank you very much
Thank
for
you
your
for the
time.
presentation.
Most importantly, thank you all for the service that you've put in. There's some of you that I've known for many years in this capacity and others, and I really appreciate all the effort. So thank you.
Thank you for your efforts as well. Okay, so we will move on to the next item, which is State of the District Celebration and Challenges. And there's there's a summary report and a copy of Dr. Hillman's PowerPoint presentation that was in your table file.
Get logged out.
I think so. If not, I'm trusting you.
Yes. I'm safe.
Access some way anyway.
I'm safe to trust, yes.
Thanks.
Well, good evening, everyone. This is the time of the year where we offer the Celebrations and Challenges presentation to really kind of put a cap on 2015-16 and celebrate the good things that happened, and then also to look ahead to 2016-17 and to talk about the things that we have ahead of us. And so you'll notice that the summary document's a little bit of a different format this year, and just trying to mix it up and keep it fresh. So we're going to start off with the most important thing that we do is teaching and learning. So as we think about the successes that we had last year, we have continued to meet the requirements of the world's best workforce to this point. And I think one of the really nice parts was identifying a real tight alignment with Northfield Promise, a local initiative to make sure that kids are supported from cradle to career really perfectly dovetails with world's best workforce. I think another key piece that we want to celebrate, and if you see in the background some of our great web crew where everybody belongs, we really have strong programming to support students during key transitions with Bridges to Kindergarten. I had a chance to attend one of the parent events there just a couple of weeks ago, and really exciting to see parents bringing their young children, getting ready for kindergarten, wanting them just to have a little bit of experience before that real first day of school. And in fact, I know that here at the high school tomorrow they're practicing, or they've got the link leaders coming in to plan for next week's 9th grade link event. And so between our Bridges to K program at kindergarten, our Web Where Everybody Belongs program at the middle school, and our Link program at the high school, we really feel that we have some strong support for students during those key transitions in their K-12 career. We also had a number of areas go through the curriculum review process or participate at some point in the curriculum review process this past year. Business, career technical education, family and consumer science, physical education, and world languages all engaged in that process at some point along that continuum. And we also know that when we look at ourselves as a district this year, as we have for several years, our students as a whole, as a district, outperform the state average on our MCA assessments that are provided by the state on an annual basis. So we continue to outperform the state in terms of MCA results, something to celebrate. I've got a couple things that I want to just focus on, and I think this is a statistic I'm very proud of, that when you look at the number of advanced placement examinations taken at Northfield High School, there were 394 tests taken last year, with 86% of those tests resulting in a 3, 4, or 5, which the College Board then looks at as being equivalent to college credit. And in some cases, the higher the score you get, the more credit you will get at institutions that participate. This is something that is routinely in the upper 80% every year, and it's something that we should be very proud of, and it's certainly a celebration for the district. We have also celebrated once again with our National Merit Program participants, and having 3, not just semifinalists last year, but 3 students who were named National Merit finalists, and then 7 commended scholars. We also celebrated with our outstanding high school English language learners and drama teacher, Jennifer Lompart, who was named one of the final 11 for the Minnesota Teacher of the Year program. Julie Pritchard and I had a chance to attend that ceremony, and we were so proud of Jennifer for representing Northfield and our teachers so very well, and we're really thrilled with her being named a finalist for that program. We also implemented for the first time ADSIS, Alternative Delivery of Specialized Instructional Services, another piece in our tiered system to try to make sure that all students have the instruction at their level to help them move ahead individually. And we really want to thank Mary Hansen, Cheryl Hall, and all of the folks who really made ADSIS very successful in the first year. We also continued RTI, which is now known by the acronym MTSS, which are multi-tiered systems of supports. And at our secondary school, and I've got one piece I'm just going to jump ahead to here and then I'll come back. You might remember hearing Carrie Duba talk at our school board meeting, and 220 high school students accessed 26 peer coaches, peer academic coaches. These are kids who volunteered a period of their day to help their fellow students in terms of their academic journey. And that resulted in over 1,000 tutoring sessions or 1,000 peer coach advising sessions last year at Northfield High School. The first time that we had done that, I think that was quite a success. And I know anecdotally, talking to a number of people who participated, there was much more than just academic tutoring. It was really both ways that students learned about each other, and I think a lot of empathy was learned along the way as well. We also continued on the path of our working toward customizing learning by expanding our one-to-one tablet program and really focusing on adding grades 4 and 5 to the one-to-one family, that iPads that stay in those classrooms. And again, you will remember the wonderful presentation that Bridgewater did here, talking about how they are customizing learning for students when they have the ability to have one-to-one. I did put a couple of things not in the exact order that they are on the sheet, but I'll make sure I cover them all. When we also think about other things that we're really proud of, we were very pleased to have conducted our second annual Ed Camp Northfield. That's a professional development opportunity that's really focused on teacher choice and professional development. And I have been in education for 21 years, and 2 years in a row, 100% of the participants surveyed said we should do that again. I always think if you get 80% of people saying you should do something again, you're in good shape. But 2 years in a row, we had 100% of people say we should use this Ed Camp, sometimes called an unconference strategy, again, because what it does is it gives teachers the opportunity to develop what they are interested in learning. It allows us to leverage the expertise that we have within our schools. It's very organic, and it's a very fun day because you don't know the schedule when you show up. And so you actually build the schedule right on the spot. And again, really positive feedback around that strategy. And you'll see when you look at the workshop schedule that's in your packet, we are extending that concept of teacher voice and choice to our workshop this year in a way that's never been done, as far as I know, here in Northfield. So we're really proud of that and how that is expanding. We're very proud of the Area Learning Center. Again, this is the first of several awards that you'll hear tonight. The Minnesota Association of Alternative Programs named Northfield ALC their Program of the Year for 2015. Very proud of that. We're very proud of the partnership that we did to bring youth mental health first aid training to all of our teachers in grades 5 through 12. This is a significant piece, as we know that social emotional learning and the ability to interact with students who are actually experiencing trauma in their home, and giving our staff just a little bit more collective capacity to try to identify and help address some of those issues. We're very proud of Northfield Middle School for their positive behavioral interventions and supports program. They were named what's called a sustained exemplar, which means that they have continued the tenets of PBIS with fidelity over a multiple year period. And if you have seen the wonderful work that Northfield Middle School has done with PBIS, really some great stuff around character and, again, social emotional learning. We continue to be very proud of the work that our professional learning communities do. I had a chance last year to embed in 2 different PLCs where I spent 5 weeks with the Sibley 5th grade teachers, and I spent about another month with our 8th grade geography PLC, getting to watch the work that they're doing on a daily basis. And I want to assure you in the community that the laser focus that I saw in those PLCs is exactly what the board, I believe, had envisioned when we provided that job-embedded professional development opportunity for our teachers. When we think about Raider activities, right, we think about the whole child, and I'm really proud to report that we'll talk about the fact that we had 5 state teams or get to the section finals at least, but 75%, now just fathom that for a moment, 75% of the students at Northfield High School participated in at least one co-curricular activity. That might have been a sport, it might have been band, choir, or orchestra, it could have been drama, or another program. But 75% of our students participated in at least one activity. We know that when kids participate in after-school activities, a number of good things happen. And so thanks to Tom and all of our coaches who do such a great job, our advisors who really work hard to give kids a real positive atmosphere for after school. And we did have 5 teams that made the section finals last year, 2 that went on to a state tournament, numerous individual and other small groups that went on to further than just their regional competition. So really proud of what Raider Activities has done in the last year. We couldn't do a celebrations and challenges without talking about and celebrating Torch in its 11th year. And the infographic in the background shows you the total number of students that have been served in last year. 395 students in grades 6 through 12 were served through Torch. And as we said earlier, they were named one of 20 finalists for the 2016 Examples of Excellencia Award. There's just not much more to say about Torch other than the fact that it is the envy of nearly every other school district and how we have worked with our students and really increased graduation rate and opportunities moving forward. We're very proud of our Torch staff and the work that they do with kids. More than 36 businesses and other organizations participated in the 2nd annual Business and Technical Trades Career Exploration Day at Northfield Middle School. And if you have had a chance to listen to these folks, they are super passionate about making sure that kids know about technical trades and the wonderful opportunities that are presenting themselves for students who choose that as a career. So that is something that we really think is important to celebrate as well. Great job by the CTE Advisory Committee, and there's a piece of Northfield Promise that focuses on that as well. Now, if we think about the Board of Education, a number of things to celebrate last year. First, we could not do this presentation without mentioning Dr. Chris Richardson, who really has put it in this format for the district. And we celebrated not only his retirement last year, but also his selection for the very prestigious Minnesota Association of School Administrators Award, the Polaris Award. Very proud of Dr. Richardson's many years of service, not just here in Northfield, but to the students in the upper Midwest. If you think about it, I was trying to count how many students he impacted over his career, and I just stopped. So I also want to congratulate the Board of Education on implementing what I think is a pretty innovative practice of engaging the community through thought exchange. If you think about over the last several years, our attempts to engage the community face-to-face, there's a number of hurdles of that. Not that anyone doesn't want to engage, but it becomes difficult with very busy schedules. And we had more than 1,000 people participate in what we call the weather report, or the state of the district process that we did last November. We will be doing that again this fall, and more than 500 people participate in our facilities planning thought exchange. And again, something that we are one of the first school districts in the state to utilize this, and we're really proud of the innovative way that we're bringing more people into the conversation, and we'll be using that data as we finalize the master facility plan, and also as we work through the finalization of the district strategic plan. That is data that you can also use to inform the finalization of that plan. We also want to congratulate the board on the continued success of Northfield Promise. We have 2 people, Ellen and Julie, both serve on various committees within Northfield Promise, and we are really pleased with the efforts that that group has, and it's really becoming a great partnership between all of the folks in the community who care about kids, want to see them be successful, and really it feels like we're all pulling in the same direction, which is really a wonderful thing. We also have maintained and being active in the Chamber of Commerce, the superintendent now serving on as an ex officio member of the Chamber Board, and really pleased to work with our business community to continue to try to strengthen the business community here in Northfield. Oh, finally, I think I'm pleased with the superintendent selection process, so thank you. I think that worked out. When we think about community services, we can't start community services without talking about the Greenvale Park Community School. And in your packets this evening, you had the handout that identified the tremendous, and that's understating it, success of the Greenvale Park Community School. Over 1,000 participants. That's 481 students, 187 secondary students, and 499 adults participated in at least one portion of the community school activities, and ranging from inoculations or immunizations to meals that brought the community together to watching Mr. Kraft pitch kickball in the gym. I mean, it really is something for everyone, and if you have not had a chance to stop by and view the programming Tuesday and Thursday evenings, starting in just a few weeks, and they would welcome you with open arms to see what's going on there. Really thrilled again with the number of people who participated in community services programs. This is a duplicated count, but 40,827 children, youth, and adults participated in at least one community services program, and that was for last November's reporting. The way that reporting works is it gets reported in November. But that's 9,000 more than the previous year. We also had 98,763 people access a school district facility through community services. That's 15,000 more than the previous year. Our Ventures programs in totality served 635 students, and our hand-in-hand preschool served 126 students. And then you remember at a board meeting last winter where the Minnesota Community Education Association came and presented our Community Services Division with their project award, which is a very big thing in that particular organization for the sports sales, basically the program where people can recycle their old sports equipment by helping other families out who might need it. So we're really proud of the work that the Community Services Division has done. When we think about district services, even though it's not completed yet, I couldn't have this without putting the Northfield Middle School driveway on here. We have completed our part, and the city has started their part. But this is something that we know has been in the works for many, many years, and the stars aligned. Many thanks to Jim Colseth and to Ben Martag and other folks at Dave Bennett, other folks at Northfield, the Northfield cities, who came together and really collaborated on making sure that this happened. We're also very proud that for another year, we are able to maintain our programming. That is not something that is to be taken for granted. That does not happen in every school every year, but our financial stewardship continue to allow us to make sure that we maintain the cash reserves and make sure that we were able to maintain that programming for this coming school year. And in addition, we could not have this without saying that we had another successful audit. And you know, our audits are squeaky clean thanks to Val Murderstorff and her finance team's work in terms of making sure that we report things in a way that is appropriate. And again, we won again the Minnesota Department of Education School Finance Award. We also had a big conversion to Gmail last year. If you think about that, that's actually a pretty big undertaking by our Technology Services Department. When people's email doesn't work, they hear about it. No one's saying, hey, great job for keeping the email up 137 days in a row. It's the moment that you need it, when it doesn't work, that people can get a little bit upset. And also, we had a chance to celebrate. I was honored to be selected by MASA last year as their outstanding central office leader, and was recognized at the MASA conference last March. When we think about student services, really want to congratulate them on getting the Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative off the ground and expanding it before it really even got off the ground. That's a significant achievement, and right now it is taking a tremendous amount of time from our district staff to make sure that that continues going. We want to make sure that we congratulate Student Services again on the wonderful Educational Assistant Training Program that they talked with you about last month at the last meeting. And also think about this. Our Student Services Department manages the individual education plans that really govern individualized, specialized individualized instruction for 574 students and 101 Section 504 plans that address students' learning needs that are related to more to health and those kinds of pieces. So Student Services is certainly busy every day, and as you can see by the data there. So as much as I am the happy-go-lucky person, we also have some challenges. And I've identified 13 challenges for this coming school year. There are hundreds that we're not even aware of quite yet, because that's the way that this works. On any given day, we have multiple challenges that are thrown at us, and we use our best experience and judgment and collaboration to meet those each day. But I've identified 13 that I think we really need to think about. And the first one is continuance. If you think about it, it's very difficult to continue to run a great ship while you're addressing on the things that are challenges that are coming at you. One of the biggest challenges is to make sure we keep doing things well that we're doing well, and while addressing things that we are concerned about, because we don't want to not mind a particular part of the store in order to fix another part of the store, only to have that part of the store now have an issue. So this is, it sounds like not a big deal, but if you really think about it, and you think about 4,000 students, 550 plus staff, this is a big deal to continue to do the things well that we do well, and as you heard, we do many things well. We also have to be very honest with ourselves that we have an opportunity gap that I think is unacceptable for this community. And we need to decrease those gaps that are present in our data for students who are being successful and students who are not being successful. I'm going to make it a priority that we focus on that. And the first thing is to be honest with ourselves about where we're doing well, but also to say where are areas that we can improve. and we need to decrease the opportunity gaps that are present in our data. We don't just take summary data. Yes, I've said that the MCAs, again, all areas above state average, but when we dig into the data, we know there are places that need attention, and we will roll up our sleeves and we will get after it, because this is just, we need to really address this issue on a number of fronts. Part of that is reading well by grade 3. This is no longer a debate. The research is incontrovertible that students who read well or are proficient at reading by grade 3 have significant more opportunities for success long term. And so this is a measurement that I think is a challenge for us to make sure that we keep addressing, and it's not something that's going to be solved overnight. And this is not that people have not been addressing this before. People have done a tremendous amount of hard work. Teaching children to read is not the easiest thing in the world, and they all arrive there at a different time. The research is around by grade 3. Most kids, if we can get them to read by grade 3, they're going to be fine. There are some who are obviously going to read a little bit later and still do very well. There are some who read earlier and still do very well. But reading well by grade 3 is a key indicator in every research analysis of what does it take to be successful as you graduate high school and move on. And it's something that we know we need to continue to work on. There's been tremendous effort. There'll be continue to be more tremendous effort. If you want to see PLCs working after something, our elementary PLCs have been continuing to go after that, and we need to tell them, keep going and try things, and if it doesn't work, let's move on to the next piece. This is a challenge that not only us, but every school district is facing, but we need to call it out and we need to name it, and we are doing so this evening and this year. Number 3 is budget adjustments, and the fact is that 20 years of chronic underfunding at the legislative level have put us in a position where, yes, yet again, we're going to be playing catch-up. And we've told you that we're anticipating some substantial budget adjustments for 2017-18, and that's very important to make sure that we maintain our district's fiscal health. The Cannon Valley Special Education Cooperative is going to be a challenge as well, because we're building something from the ground up, and there are a number of questions that every day come up that, 4 districts, how are we going to handle this particular piece? But we've got the right people doing the work, and I think we've got great collaboration between the 4 districts and believe that we will meet those challenges. But it is going to be some challenging pieces along the way in terms of making sure that it goes as well as we want. We know that it will long term. It's the startup piece. We're really starting a brand new school system. And from everything to putting the name on top of the purchase order, to hiring staff, to ensuring an appropriate way for assessing progress, there's all sorts of challenges that will come with it. And we're ready to take on those challenges. We're implementing the positive attention, learning, and support positions at our elementary schools, and the challenge there is to ensure that as we use this is really acknowledging that social and emotional learning is a precursor or is as important as the academic. If a student does not have a strong social emotional learning quotient, or if they're not there yet, it makes accessing the academic portion of their day that much more difficult. So the PALS positions are a challenge that, again, I think we've got the right plan going forward, but it will be a challenge to make sure that we get the maximum impact of those positions. Another challenge that we always deal with are choices. We have a number of choices in our school system. This is great. It's one of the reasons that Mary and I chose to move our family here 8 years ago. The fact is that choices also provide challenge in terms of whether it is the secondary schedule that you heard Joel and Greg talk to you about in June, whether it is about certain things in our elementary programming. Choices that we have are all good, but they also present a challenge, and we just need to acknowledge that that will be a challenge moving forward, especially when considering the budget adjustments that we'll be looking at. We will continue to have a challenge of customization. We're now in the 4th year of our transformational technology plan, and the fact is that we are closer to redefinition, but we've learned that it is not a ladder. As Kim Brisky likes to say, it's more of a swimming pool in terms of you might swim in the deep part one time and another part of the class you're swimming a little bit in the more shallow end, but we continue to focus on customizing students' learning so that they get the right instruction at the right time so that they can move forward. And as you've seen in several presentations, technology really can help us do things that we weren't able to do before. We're starting to really realize some of those things, and I think it's only going to accelerate in the next year or so. We really need to take a look at our curriculum review process as a challenge. Our curriculum review process is currently a 7-year process, and really what we've talked with Mary Grace Hansen, our Director of Teaching and Learning, about is how can we make that more nimble? How can we be more reactive and proactive when we're able to things like changing or updated standards, legislative intrusion, I didn't say that, legislative action, and things like that that can influence our curriculum review process. It's always a challenge, and we need to take a look at what can we do to modernize that process. The charter school authorization, we're committed to being a strong charter school authorizer for Prairie Creek Community School and for Arcadia, and we will be finishing the charter school authorization renewal this fall as part of the corrective action plan that nearly every authorizer is going through now with the new renewal process. And we feel very good about the relationships with our charter schools. You know, it's a really fun evening when they come and give us the report. I actually got to go watch the city project last year that we've heard so many times. Amazing learning, great stuff, and they're doing some really good work, and we're really happy to have them as part of our broader educational family here in Northfield. We need to continue to maximize PLC impact. We really believe that PLCs are the change agent in the district. That's where instructional change can happen, and we need to continue to give them the permission to try things and fail faster. It's going to be a theme that we're going to be looking at. We want to try things, and if they don't work, that's fine. Let's move on to the next piece so we can find what the right instructional strategy is. And frankly, the right instructional strategy might not be the same 2 years in a row, even for the same subject area. But we need to continue to take on that challenge of maximizing our PLC impact. We'll be finalizing the master facilities plan this fall that we hope will govern the next 15 years of both our life cycle of our buildings as well as the deferred maintenance plan that we have for the next decade. And finally, one of the other challenges that we really need to address is looking at our postgraduate pathways. And we really need to influence folks in modifying our mindset. And when I say modifying our mindset about postgraduate pathways, that there are multiple pathways to success after high school. For some students, that might be a traditional four-year college. For some of them, it might be a highly selective traditional four-year college. For others, it might be a 2-year technical or community school that allows them to enter the workforce very quickly. For some of them, it might be entering the workforce right away. For some of them, it might be entering the military or doing some kind of volunteer service or a Rotary exchange kind of piece. But I really think as a community, we need to work on influencing ourselves to say that there are multiple pathways to postgraduate success. And as the adults, we need to be the ones who are telling the kids that, because there's some pressure on our kids. And we need to make sure that we're modeling that for our students, that we believe there's a number of ways to get to postgraduate success. And we look forward to working with Northfield Promise and their subcommittees on trying to do some more data collection on that and trying to make sure that we can influence it in that way. Leadership expert John Maxwell says this: success is due to our stretching to the challenges of life. Failure comes when we shrink from them. And so I believe that we have the right team in the right place at the right time. And it's time to get to work, because teachers show up next week. It's going to be very exciting. Actually, new teachers show up on Wednesday. So that is my version of the celebrations and challenges, and I would certainly be happy to take any questions that people might have or feedback.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Okay, questions, comments? Ellen?
So I like the format. I liked the, in particular, I guess, having the challenges down to 13. I probably can only hold like 7 in my head, but I like at least a smaller number. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit, maybe a crystal ball. We're well aware of some of them, but if there are particular ones that you think, for example, I'm looking at number 5, the Canterbury, the CB, how are we?
Subsec,
Thank
yep.
you. And then the other one that I was wondering about, in terms of, we haven't talked as much about in terms of a challenge, is the curriculum review process. So I don't want to derail us, but if those two are in particular, I was wondering, you have them on the challenges. I would say that, yeah, of course, the subsec I would have expected. I'm surprised about the curriculum review piece. If you could give us a little bit more about crystal ball of why those two in particular you might want to think about this year.
Well, I think number one with subsec, anytime that you're starting something like this from scratch, it's really just acknowledging that there will be challenges, the entire year. From starting off from basically taking the programming that was in one location to 3 different locations. We're now leasing 3 different spaces. The first challenge is finishing all of the construction at a couple of the locations in order to be ready. And that's part of the ball game. Anytime you're doing any kind of school renovation, it always goes right up to the last minute, to things like making sure the phones are working and all of those other kinds of things that go along with it. The first payroll, the pieces of how, as the fiscal host and us actually having hired all of the SevSec staff as Northfield Public Schools employees, but basically selling those services then to the cooperative and how that financial workflow works. There'll be a lot of learning this year. I think a lot of things will go very well because of our planning. I think there are also going to be things that come out of left field that we had not discussed. For example, at the last SevSec board meeting, the discussion about who is responsible for calling off school for the cooperative sites. The newest superintendent drew the short straw on that one, so that would be me. And basically, as Northfield goes, that's how SevSec will go in terms of that particular call. So those are just a few examples, Ellen. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
And then we've talked about the curriculum review process for a couple of years. And what our concern has been is the length of time that the review process can take. And that there's also pieces that are curveballs, for example, when the legislature updates the standards or requires new standards. When different standards come out from other governing organizations, since the fact is that the legislature does not govern all of our programming. How do we make sure that we're keeping current while maintaining a sense of financial stability? And then in addition, making sure that we're looking at our practice on a regular basis. And the term that comes to my mind is being more nimble in terms of being able to react and modify our curriculum and our pedagogical approaches to meet the students who are in front of us. When we design a curriculum for the next several years, we're talking about the content. We're not talking about the kids. And I really think it's important that we teach students first and the content second. We need to know the students. We need to have a strong relationship with them. We need to know the standards, and we need to know what's the right way to deliver that. A lot of times it's the curriculum that we've used for a number of years, but in certain circumstances we may have to take a different road, or there might be something that's more relevant today than it was just a few years ago. Part of the reason that we've been trying to look, though the marketplace has not kept up with us, our desire of digital and other kinds of resources to try to keep the material fresh and to give our teachers the best materials with which to deliver the content. So that's what I'm really looking at as the challenges there, just really to try to be more nimble in that process.
Thanks.
Excellent question. Other questions, comments? I just would comment that I think you kind of touched on a little bit in terms of the team, and I think that if you look at any one of these and you realize the effort that it takes to achieve any one of these, and that's obviously a result of a total team of district employees working towards this. And I love the way we take the time to celebrate, because education, it's daunting, it's challenging, it's only seeming to get more complex, and so to take the time to look back at where you've been is really a very good thing to do, and a number of things that were challenges are now in successes. So we see how that works. And
We hope the same for next year.
Exactly. So thank you, and I would echo Ellen's comment. I really dearly love the new format. So good work.
Thank you.
Okay, Noel.
Good report. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Noel.
You and the staff make the board look good.
Yeah, I get to stand up here and talk about it, but really it's the hundreds and hundreds of dedicated teachers and educational assistants and administrators who are working really hard every day to deliver this. It's really a privilege to be able to deliver the report, but I'm not foolish. I know who's actually doing the work, and it's not me.
Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move on? None? Okay. Thank you. Dr. Hill. Okay, so we will move to our last item for discussion, which is Sibley 5th grade enrollment. There was information in your table file, so board members want to find that. Hopefully everyone has that. Here is Dr. Hillman, and then Scott Sanis,
Yes.
principal at Sibley, will present.
Yes, well, thank you for squeezing us in the agenda tonight, or on the agenda. Dr. Hillman mentioned that teachers report next week, and I'm here hoping that you'll consider hiring another 5th grade teacher to report next week. Dr. Hillman and I have been talking over the last few days about the 5th grade enrollment at Sibley. And the 5th grade enrollment there has increased significantly from the time the group came in as kindergartners, where they had 85 students enroll, to now where we have 115 students who are enrolled. I've worked with the 5th grade team last week, attempting to find ways to maybe work around large numbers. We're currently at 32 students in each of our contemporary classrooms. That's 3 contemporary classrooms, 96 kids. And we really couldn't squeeze out a whole lot of time. And what we did is we looked at the Companeros classroom that has 19 students, and would there be ways for us to move some students around and make it work? And in all actuality, with the fact that we revamped Companeros about 6 or 7 years ago, and we added a Spanish literacy component to Companeros, most of the day is spent bouncing back and forth between English and Spanish. At best, we figured we could maybe squeeze 45 minutes out of the day for some of the contemporary students to move in there. So we put together this information. It's the cohort enrollment analysis for this 5th grade dating back to kindergarten. You have that in front of you. As you take a look at that, you'll notice that in kindergarten they started at 85 students. We went up 10 students as they went into 1st grade, and we opened up that first Companeros classroom. We added 7 more students as they went to 2nd grade, and we did add some students to that Companeros classroom at that time too. We added 3 students there. And then in 3rd grade, 4th grade, and 5th grade respectively, we added 4 students, 5 students, and 4 students to our total number. You will notice that the Companeros students went from an all-time high of 28 to an all-time low of 19 that we have registered this year. Based on that 24 student number from last year, we had 2 families that moved, and we had 3 families that requested the contemporary program for the last year of their child's education. We've also continued to add along the way. You know, our attendance boundary does have a significant amount of growth in that Sibley attendance boundary. There's a lot of building going on. We altered the numbers before we printed this today. We were sitting at 32, 32, 31. And then at about noon today, we had another 5th grade enrollment. And that's just kind of how things go when you have large classes. When we look at the other considerations for this particular group as a whole, their academic profile is consistent with the other grades that we've had go through Sibley. You know, their math and reading scores are right in there with everybody else. The potential specialist impact, back in the day when we were really lean with specialist time, we would have to add specialist time when we added a section. Based on how we operate now, we could actually absorb this additional class and make the accommodations necessary without any additional FTE for specialist time. When we look at candidate pools, it's hiring an elementary teacher is different than hiring a more specialized teacher at the high school, say in the sciences area, or even a Companeros teacher. A recent grade 4 position had 86 applicants for it, and I'm willing to bet that if you do choose to move forward with hiring a 1.0 FTE, we would have a pretty substantial candidate pool. The location for Sibley has always been something, if we were to add classes at Sibley, we've always looked at our space as being a pretty significant issue. As it stands right now, if you were to approve a position, I would move forward with utilizing one of our computer labs by leaving the computers in the lab, actually, and utilizing that space as a classroom. The computer labs at Sibley are in the newer wing, if you're not familiar with it, and the rooms are larger than an average classroom. There is space next to each computer workstation for desk space for each of the students. We need to be a little creative with some of the books, but iPads have helped in that regard. So that would be That would be our space consideration. We're already equipped with overhead projector and smartboard in one of our rooms, so we wouldn't need any additional items there for that. The financial impact, as reported by our district office, is about $78,000 for an average cost of one FTE moving forward. And the long-term impact, we're looking at this being a one-year deal. With this group being 5th grade, they have 1 year left at Sibley. And this is, when you look at it, you can see it's obvious. We've watched this group grow over the years. And last year we were sitting at 28s and 29. And, we never did hit 30. However, we don't want to start at 32 and continue to go up. We'd rather start in that 24 area and go up if indeed our enrollment does go up. And with a significant amount of housing starts in and around that area, it certainly could. Is there anything you want to add, Dr. Hillman?
I think that we had put this on the agenda as a report simply because we wanted to report the numbers, but you've heard us use some language about asking you potentially to consider an additional section. And as we started this, we thought about it as a report, and then as really quickly, especially as we've seen additional students enroll, even in just the last couple of days, the fact is that it would be possible if you were interested in looking at amending the agenda to consider adding this. But I think the key thing is that when we left school last year, we had 29, 29, 29 in the contemporary sections and 24 in the compañero section. And while 29 is on the high side, it is an area that we have been before in terms of 5th grade. The concern is when we hit 3 sections at 30 plus, that's where we get concerned. If we had 1 section of 30, we'd probably giving you an update, but maybe not quite as concerned about it. And these numbers have really even changed just since the last board meeting in terms of seeing people coming in and registering in those pieces. So I think the concern is that starting the year in 5th grade with 3 sections of 32 is really not a good place that we want to be. It's been a long time since we've had that many elementary sections above 30. We have looked across the district. There are some other grade levels that are within earshot of hitting 30, but no one else that I'm aware of at this time where any section at the elementary has hit 30 quite yet.
Right.
So I know that that's always possible, but again, we don't have that in the near future of 3 sections at a grade level in one building with that. So our concern is just from the perspective of how quickly this has materialized. It was always close, but over the summer, we come back and now we're talking about 3 sections of 32. So we wanted to bring it to your attention because we really couldn't wait any further to wait to see any more whites of their eyes, because our next meeting obviously would be in September and the school year would have started. And if we are to address this, if you were to so choose to amend the agenda to consider this, the fact would be that we'd be able to get things in place for the first day of school, which we know is really important. It certainly could be done after the school year starts. I've seen that in previous districts. Works, but not nearly as well as if we're proactive.
Okay, questions, board members? Margaret?
Would I be able to make a motion to move this to an item for individual action?
Yes.
Okay, I move that we move this item to the items for individual action.
So what would the motion be?
Isn't that the motion? That we move?
What's the action? What's the action though?
Oh, I would like to move the Sibley 5th grade enrollment issue from the items for discussion report to the superintendent's report, items for individual action.
To support them.
To
the
add
hiring
to
of
the
the teachers.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, to include to vote on including an extra section of 5th grade at Sibley Elementary, correct?
Yes.
Would we need to specifically talk about, adding an FTE to?
Is that what it implies? Is adding
1.0
section?
FTE,
1.0
5th grade
FTE
teachers.
and an additional section of 5th grade at Sibley Elementary.
Okay, so there is a motion to move an item to items for individual action, and the motion being to add a 1.0 FTE to for an additional 5th grade section at Sibley Elementary is the motion. Is there a second?
I would like to add a couple of comments to the motion. Where do I do that?
Let's get a second and then we'll have discussion.
A second.
Okay, second by Noel. So now we can have discussion on the motion of adding an additional FTE to Sibley.
Can we just vote on moving it first?
Well, we're having, oh, I'm sorry.
Or just
We
voting
have a
on moving
motion,
it?
so now we have it, but we will do that when we go to items for individual action. Or can we?
So you've got a motion
And we
to
have a
amend the
second.
agenda to add, or to
Right.
move it to the
Right.
items for individual action. You have a second, so now it's discussing whether or not we move it to the
Right.
items for individual action.
Right. And then we would have discussion when we go to have it in the item for individual action as well.
So that's when I can add the amendment.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So questions though for Dr. Hillman or Scott about the discussion? Yes, Ellen.
What is the situation with the fund balance? This would be coming out of the fund balance, so maybe this is a valid question as to where would we sit?
So we don't, our audit starts on Monday, so I don't have final fiscal 16 results. But the projection for ending 17-18 is ending ending 16-17 just over $9 million in our fund balance. So it would just be, 78,000 or whatever. That's our average, experienced teacher. So it would obviously depend, and with full benefits, so it would depend on the candidate that was hired, what that actual impact would be.
And we're projecting that was around 17.6% fund balance at the end of 16-17, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
So it would reduce the fund balance, and we know that there are budget adjustments coming for 17-18. Just to be straightforward.
Margaret. Scott, I have a question. This class, if I'm doing my math right, this is the graduating class of 2024 we're talking about, I think. Okay. So adding this extra FTE for them, would that extra FTE follow that class as they age, or it would stay at Sibley Elementary?
Actually, what we're looking at here is having that section be a one year kind of fix for us right now.
At Sibley.
At Sibley.
Okay, thank you.
And in fact, Margaret, if you take a look at the 5th grade across the district, as they move to 6th grade, it's one of our smaller 6th grades that's coming through the
okay.
pipeline. It happens that at Sibley, that's a larger 5th grade class.
So when it melds at the middle school, it will be that easier to incorporate.
Right, the FTE would sunset at the end of the year.
Okay. But I'm looking, there's a lot of development happening east of town in your section, so are we gonna be revisiting this next year?
Well, it's really hard to say. When we look at our current 4th grade numbers, I think we're sitting at 26, 26, 27. Our current 3rd grade numbers are at 28, 28, 29, and those are contemporary classrooms. If you look at the rest of our contemporary classrooms, K1, 2, we're sitting in the low to mid 20s, but I don't think anything tops 25 right now.
Okay. Because I'm just thinking, with all that development happening, I can see it booming again at Sibley. Because when I think about these classroom teachers, I know they're not all in the room at the same time.
Right.
But that's still 28 or 29 report cards and conferences and a larger number of IEPs potentially for each of these classroom teachers. So I would like to see us revisit the numbers that are just, I think, in my mind, dangerously close to just really too much, especially with all the building happening in your district.
Sure.
And Margaret, we have a couple of different ways to address that. Number one, what we do at the time that we're staffing each year, we actually run a calculation based upon a ratio that the district has used for a number of years to assign FTE to a grade level at a building. And when we ran that calculation for the Sibley 5th grade last spring, it warranted the 3 sections. If we were to run that same calculation today, it would have warranted the 4th section of contemporary. So that's a piece that we run through, every spring in terms of a fresh calculation each year. Then in addition, one of the reasons that we're bringing this to you to consider or to talk about is the fact that we also normally have had some contingency funding. As you know, we usually set aside enough for 3 FTE. A significant portion of that FTE is being addressed at the high school with our very large sophomore class. 360 students or so. That takes nearly 2 FTE. We're also using the contingency plan to work through ADSYS, because remember, ADSYS is not a grant, we have to put some dollars forward and the state matches some of it. That is a class size piece because it allows students to get some additional instruction outside of the regular mainstream classroom. So if we had had the contingency dollars available, we would not have been coming to you with this because that would have already been approved.
Right.
As we move forward, as we manage those contingency dollars, the possibility of addressing something like this is possible as we move forward as well.
Good.
Other questions board members have? I have a question. So these applicants, so certainly if it's someone who's teaching, so if we were to move forward with this and have it approved by the board, would there be any concern that an applicant their district wouldn't allow them out of their contract because it is so close?
You know, that's always a possibility late in the summer like this. I'd need to look at the applications and see who's available right now. I mean, we would want somebody to hit the ground running sooner rather than later. Like I said, our candidate pools are usually pretty robust. So, you know, I'm hopeful moving forward. I hired a second grade teacher earlier in the summer, and we had some fantastic candidates.
Okay, good.
I think we've had some districts to the north. If you think about it, some of the reductions that some of our districts to the north have done, I do believe that there's a number of quality teachers available who are not under contract.
Good. Okay. So any other questions? Again, we'll have an opportunity to discuss as a board when we get to item for individual action, but
We have to vote on the motion to add, do we? I don't
Oh, you're right.
First, we have to
Yep,
vote on whether to move it.
Yep, yep. Well, we have a motion and a second, so now we need to, any other discussion? So then we'll vote to move this to item for individual action, thanks, Ellen. Okay, so we have a motion and a second to move the one addition of a 1-point FTE to create an additional 5th grade section at Sibley. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. We'll move that forward to item for individual action. So we are actually at the point in our agenda of items for individual action. We will address the first one, which is the Minnesota Association of Charter School Authorizers, and that was actually in your table file. So Dr. Hillman.
This is a piece that we received last week. We've participated in the Minnesota Association of Charter School Authorizers. Dr. Richardson, I think, actually was part of the people that got that group together. And it was really an ad hoc group for many, many years. It's becoming more formalized with required membership and no cost to it, but in addition having voting members, and they're actually developing some bylaws, and part of that is that we actually need to officially join it as opposed to being more of an ad hoc approach. We have all of the other memberships that we participate in, MSBA, you know, all of those other things that we ask you to approve. So even though there's not a cost, you know, as part of it, we thought we could bring it forward to you to have you officially authorize us to join MAXA.
Okay, so prior to any discussion or questions, is there a motion to approve becoming a member of Minnesota Association of Charter School Authorizers? So moved by Ellen. Is there a second? Second by Noel. Questions or comments for Dr. Hillman? So Minnesota Association of Charter School Authorizers, isn't that 3 people? 3
Actually,
schools?
no, well, you're right, the public schools, that is true. There's 3 of us public schools that are still remaining,
I
but
see,
it also
private,
includes
okay.
all of the, for example,
Okay.
St. Kate's, they actually only authorize 1 charter school. They reach out to us because we're of a similar portfolio size. So yes, it includes all the single-purpose authorizers, IQS and all those other folks, the Audubon Society and those folks as
So
well.
would they be looking for necessarily Northfield School District to have, you know, membership, become officers within the, you know, the...
We're just going to start by going to the meetings.
Okay.
That's
You
an
probably don't need another meeting.
No, but if you, the piece that, this is important, I felt it was important for us to join because part of the renewal process has been around the replication and sharing of ideas. And in addition, a significant part of our plan is about participating in MAXA. Because we only have 2 charter schools in our portfolio, we don't have some of the advantages that the single-purpose authorizers have in the new renewal process. And so participating in MAXA and then in the parent organization, the National Association of charter school authorizers was a core component of a number of pieces of our plan.
Okay. Well, it seems like a good idea for us to do this. Okay, so is there any other questions or comments before we move to a vote? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we now have a second item for individual action. Is there a motion to approve a 1-point FTE addition for an additional 5th grade section at Sibley? Moved by Margaret, second?
Second.
Second by Ellen. Okay, discussion or questions?
I have an amendment that it might be in consideration. Scott mentioned that there were some additional expenses that needed to be included to make it work, speaking particularly of desks and so on. I see that as part of the other considerations. Is that significant to the motion or not?
No, we would not need to make any other
All right.
purchases. I think we can whatever we need to do, we can absorb with building funds.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm good.
No, that's a great question. So other questions specifically about the motion? Or comments? Ellen?
I guess it's not specific, it's about what we're about to vote on, not about the language of the motion, but, I guess what I come down to is that I don't think, that there's any other way to go with this. I mean, I think, I know we're all thinking about upcoming and what's gonna happen with the budget, but when you have class sizes of 32 at the elementary, I don't think any of us are thinking there's another option here, so that's where I'm sitting.
Other comments? Excellent, thank you. Other comments? I echo what Ellen says. I think about physically trying to fit 32 kids in a classroom, and that's just, how do you even do that, So, yeah, I think that we really are at a point where this is unnecessary, and, again, going back to financial stewardship, that we have the ability to do this. I think we're very fortunate in that we're able to do that. And I think also through thought exchange, that was one thing that we did hear our community talk about. And so this really is a tipping point. So I thank you for coming forward with this, Scott and Dr. Hillman. And I know there's going to be some scrambling, and we appreciate that work that will have to happen. And I think that our parents will be really quite pleased that I don't know what open house would have been like if they had to look at 32 student roster. I think that would have been a really difficult thing for administrators and ultimately the board to have to respond to. So I think this is good. Other comments or questions before we move to a vote? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Good work. Okay, so that puts us now at the consent grouping. We're at consent. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent grouping? Remember, there were some items in the personnel items in the table file. Otherwise, okay. So there's only personnel items in the consent grouping. So not likely anything anyone would want to pull. So is there a motion to approve the consent grouping?
Motion.
Moved by Jeff. Is there a second? Second by Margaret. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we'll go on to items for information. We have a few this evening. The first one that was in your packet is the workshop schedule. Dr. Hillman.
Yes, and you'll see that we have a very assertive workshop schedule this year, and including time for teachers to be working and preparing for the school year, as well as we're having for the first time in a decade an actual all-school, every employee welcome to kick off the school year. It's actually on Tuesday, the second day of workshop. And then what you'll really notice is that a Ready, Set, Go day on Wednesday for our 3 elementaries, and then both Wednesday and Thursday for the secondary and Thursday for everyone, really kind of a mini conference, if you really think about it. If you've ever attended a professional conference where there's a number of breakout sessions. Mary, what's the last count on the number of breakout sessions? Do you have any?
No.
So it's a and it's not just our own folks as well. There's things that range from things about instruction and pedagogy to updates from our district office to the Northfield Human Rights Commission coming to provide a presentation about being inclusive in the classroom and those kinds of pieces. In addition, Dr. Bruce Miles will be here that day to work with staff on the strategic planning input for our faculty and staff. So a very robust workshop week, very well planned by Mary Grace Hansen and the DCSDC. I got that acronym right the first time I said it publicly. I'm proud of that. And so we're really thrilled to have people come back. It starts off actually this Wednesday with our new teachers back for 2 days this week. And so it is time to get this thing started.
Wonderful. That's great. I think Ellen and I talked over the weekend, and I think we said, how would you choose? I mean, there's so many good ones. It's crazy. So I think that they'll just really enjoy the opportunity to but the angst of how to pick.
And what we know is that providing teachers with choice in their professional development is quickly becoming the standard. And I think we're actually ahead of the game on this, versus a number of other districts. But what you're really seeing is that empowering people to be professionals and choose what's the most important to them is really important. There are times when we need to sit everyone in the auditorium and hear the same message, but it's much rarer than it should be.
Excellent, thank you. Our next item for information, liability for school district leases. This was a result of our discussion last week about the swim agreement. And again, there was information in the table file. Erin, you wanted to share that?
So the question that just came up last time was around if we were carrying a dollar amount high enough for the coverage of the swimming pool, and have spoke with our insurance agent who's saying, yes, we do have enough coverage for use of the swimming pool or any other facility within the district. And then his follow-up question, as you can see, was around if we had how in those associations that use our facility, how we're named in their insurance. And so I did have him review a copy of one of the associations, and again said yes, what we are requiring is absolutely what we should be requiring. We do have that for any person or any organization that does rent the school district property, and it is on file in the community services office, and we do make sure it's updated yearly. So he is happy with where we are as far as our lease agreement.
Great. Okay. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, our next item for information is around the Dundas Dome rental potential for the school district. Dr. Hillman and also Tom Groutman is here as well.
Yeah, if I can invite Tom just to step to the podium,
Yes,
just in case he
absolutely.
wants to add anything as I just shared this item for information. We're sharing it as an item for information tonight, and this is one of those things that will most likely come back to you, but we wanted to share with you the information just to get it percolating and thinking it through. But you've read about the new facility within the school district dubbed the Dundas Dome. We're not asking for any approval of anything this evening. We're simply just giving you some information about it. Just so that you are aware, the Dundas Dome is located at 901 Cannon Road, kind of behind Maurice's over in that particular area of town. And it's a 90,000 square foot facility. And we have been, since this was a concept, we've had some conversations with the owners about the possibility of using this facility for some district activities. As you know, we're really specifically thinking about it for the spring sports. As you know, with spring sports in Minnesota weather, the fact is that we're never sure what it's going to be. And my joke is that, it's from someone else, if you don't like the weather in Minnesota, wait 15 minutes. And really, when we have to go inside, our student athletes often are participating in practices in that early part of the season until 10 p.m. at night. We're using all of the gym space to the best of our ability, but it is a real challenge, and we know that we want to try to give students the most reasonable practice end time that we possibly can. So having another facility that the advantage is something that we don't own, something that we would not have to maintain, but have the benefit of being able to lease it for the amount of time that we think we would need it for, is something that we really believe has some potential, and we will invite you to consider it over the next. We'll bring it back and talk about it more. The key thing is that we would basically, as we consider it, we're looking at this much like we do how we do the lease for the Northfield Ice Arena for our hockey teams and the Northfield Gymnastics Club for our gymnastics program. Again, what we think is really the positives of it would be the fact that we can take advantage of it but not have to own it, not have to maintain it. This kind of rental is available for using our lease levy authority, again in a very similar way that we do for the hockey arena and for the gymnastics club. You'll see that the Dundas Dome charges $450 an hour for the use of the entire 90,000 square foot facility. So Tom, I had asked Tom to take a look at what he would think would be the reasonable place for us to start, and he generated the hours that are in your packet. Tom, would you like to say anything about just how you generated that portion of it?
Well, I also got input from coaches and asked them, what do you foresee your use? So I got a lot of good data from them. I think that there's great opportunities for our teams to share. So for the most part, it may not be one team within the whole space. I think the other piece that's really important is the sheer size and the surface of this facility, the height of the ceiling, and the artificial surface will be very advantageous for especially our spring sport teams, and especially, like Dr. Hillman said, at that time of the year.
I think the other piece that we're looking at is in your packet, we actually had Ehlers and Associates run what would the potential tax impact be on the lease levy, and what you'll see is that, and again, that's just it's a sample. We asked them, hey, if we were to lease this at $40,500, what would it cost the average taxpayer? And you'll see an annual estimated cost for a $300,000 home would be $5 annual cost. For a commercial industrial property valued at $1.5 million, it'd be a $47 anticipated tax impact. So, what we think is a pretty reasonable cost for what we would get in return for utilizing that facility. And again, this is just for information this evening. What we would do is at some point, probably in September, before we'd get to the preliminary levy, we'd ask you to consider a lease agreement that we would yet to work out with the Dundas Dome folks and their administration. And then we'd ask you to approve that, and then it would also be part of, potentially, if we were to get that far, part of our final levy approval. I've also, in your packet on the second page, this was new in the table file this evening, there's a second page which Tom and I started something called the Frequently Asked Questions on the Dundas Dome. And what we'll do is we'll add to this just as we hear questions or things. And so I'm not going to go through all of those, but you can take a look at them. And they're just some general pieces about, for example, how does the dome rate compare to the rates of the other facilities we rent? And of course, it's a much different facility. 90,000 square feet is much bigger than the gymnastics club. It would be exclusive utilization where, for example, when our gymnastics athletes are using the gymnastics club, the club itself has the right to continue to run practices or classes or things like that. The hockey arena, a very different, basically a single activity location where we can really only ever have one, possibly two teams at the same time if we're lucky. But that doesn't happen very often, I'm guessing, Tom.
Well, it would be our teams. It would be our JV and varsity boys hockey team or girls hockey team, but we really don't use the hockey arena with another like the Northfield Hockey Association or St. Olaf College. We don't share the space that way.
And as I said, there's a number of you'll see there's one question in terms of the choice of times that we don't have a clear answer on that yet. We're working through that. But what we try to do is anticipate some questions that might come forward and giving you some answers to those. So again, this is really just giving you we gave you a little bit of a heads up last May, if you remember talking about the possibility of it. We've worked on what would it actually kind of look like, and we wanted to provide you some information this evening. And again, anticipate, because it would be a new lease levy piece, we would want to come forward, with additional information when we would ask you to consider it at a future board meeting. Is there anything else you want to add, Tom?
No, I think that takes care of it.
Questions or comments? No.
Has there been discussion regarding the priority of users? For example, where are we on the list of the priorities, as opposed to another district that may choose to pay a different rate?
Well, I think just the sheer owners of the facility, since they're in Northfield, I think they really feel they want to see our kids get the opportunity. But I think we're going to need to hammer that out and have more dialogue with that piece.
Thank you.
Margaret.
For some of these teams, they need not a ton, but a good amount of equipment to run a good practice. Does the Dundas Dome have equipment there, say, for baseball and softball, batting cages, things like that, or are we going to need to bring our own equipment?
I don't foresee that we're going to have batting cages in there,
Okay.
or we wouldn't bring that.
Okay.
But there would be advantageous opportunities for baseball and softball without batting there. But we could
Okay.
use the batting cages here and then do other things there.
Okay.
Again, because of the sheer space and that surface.
Okay. But they would probably have to haul their own.
We would bring our own equipment
Yeah,
for
okay.
sure out there, yes, in all of our sports.
Okay.
And actually, kids are really bringing all of their own equipment to whatever field that they're practicing at, and they're
Right.
using a lot of fields throughout the community, so
Sure.
it really wouldn't be any different.
Right.
And I have a second question, if that's okay.
Go ahead. I'm thinking another advantage is, even if the weather has cleared up, the ground is still muddy, and we're tearing up our fields by letting those teams onto them with what we've got right now.
Absolutely. It would
So-
really protect our surface as well.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Jeff?
What is the anticipated temperature in the dome?
So when we've talked to them, they keep it, remember, this is a seasonal dome, so by law, it can only be up for, I think it's 136 days, Tom, if I'm right?
Yes, correct.
So they do have a heating piece in it. It's, my understanding is it would be in the upper 60s to lower 70s. It's not going to be super hot. It's not, but there's a specific time period that they are able to have it up, and then there's some pieces because of that.
I foresee it being much more comfortable than what we see outside in like March 15th.
Other questions? I had two questions. So under the response to calculating actual usage, in other words, will spring sports teams be scheduled to practice at the dome or only in the case of inclement weather in response of part of our scheduling options and sites? So does that mean that a softball team or a baseball team would be scheduled in the dome, or is it really just based on it's raining this week, we're going to move to the dome?
We would look at incorporating that facility along with the other facilities that we have right from the very beginning, anticipating that the weather, again, March 15th through at least the first week of April is going to be not the best, or the field conditions might not be the best. So we would look at scheduling it right from the very get-go. And there's also perhaps opportunity even beyond that, because I do remember the year my 3-year-old grandson was born, that May 1, we had a snowstorm, and May 2, we had a snow day. So I think there's opportunities there too, to have that flexibility. But again, we need to talk with the owners and the managers of that facility. This is all very preliminary at this point.
Sure. Yeah, we just really wanted to bring you a more full picture of what we'd be looking at as we move forward, just so that you have it. If you have questions, that we can start to try to think about those. And I think the key thing is going to be that, again, that dome can only be up for so many days. And so the moment that they put it up, so if they inflate that in, say, November, the first week in November, that starts the clock. And so even some of those early May snowstorms, it could be outside of our control. Another piece that's possible, though we have not included it in here, is that when they do take dome facility, that when they, I think will be deflating the dome, the surface is still there, and I know that they will go ahead and rent that turfed space to people at a much lower rate, once the dome is down. However, that's something that, as we've talked about, is not included in our plans at the time, because we could also look at doing some of it really more on a case-by-case basis. So if we need something for the football team in November, that wouldn't necessarily have to be part of the lease. In fact, some of our fall teams have actually rented space in domes in other towns when they've made the state tournament. So there's more than just the potential rental piece. There's other ways to select from kind of an a la carte fashion.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Thank you. Any other last-minute questions, comments? No? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for being here, Tom. Okay. Last item for information is filings for school board.
I think we've got one more.
No, one more.
Strategic planning.
Oh, I'm sorry. I missed that. Strategic planning process update. Yes, strategic planning community meeting.
So just, again,
Right, thanks,
an announcement, and looking at Philip here, if on September 1st, from 5:30 to 8, we have our community input session for the strategic plan. It's going to take place at Northfield Middle School. We have sent out a number of email communications to families within the district. This September 1st piece is really about engaging the community, and so we just invite anyone who wants to attend that strategic planning session, 5:30 to approximately 8 o'clock. at Northfield Middle School. And Dr. Bruce Miles will be here to facilitate that portion of the input. Remember, that's just one piece of the input puzzle. There's a number of other pieces. Then later in September, we'll be getting together as a board to finalize that strategic planning process.
Any questions about the community meeting? Okay. Then we'll move forward. The last item for information then is filings for school board. Dr. Hillman.
And at this time, we have had all 4 incumbents who have refiled or who have filed for re-election. And those would be Ellen Iverson, Rob Hardy, Fritz Bogat, and Noel Stratmon. And then we have an additional 2 new people who have filed for the board, Amy Gorwitz and Tom Browniak. And so we will have 6 people on the ballot come November. And so that is the update on the school board filings.
Excellent, thank you. So that's it for item for information. Future meetings. Next regular school board meeting, Monday, September 12th, 7 p.m. in the Media Center. And then, as board members are aware, Monday, September 22nd from 6 to 9 p.m. strategic planning final work session. And that, Thursday. Oh, I'm sorry. Why did I do that? I'm sorry. Thursday, September 22nd, 6 to 9 p.m. the strategic planning final work session. That location is the high school media center. Yes, because I don't think we knew the location last time, so we will be here. And then again, Monday, September 26th, 2016, regular school board meeting back here in the media center. So with that, I ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Noel. Is there a second? Second by Jeff. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.